Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And Prince Andrew didn't see anything.
Move on! Nothing to see here! Please disperse!
Yeah, on Saturday he released this long, rambling statement.
Basically trying to distance himself from Epstein and making himself sound as if he was walking around with his eyes closed for the last 20 years.
The Sun gave this, reported this great extra detail that Andrew had personally dictated his statement and did not involve officials in its wording. That's so obvious.
Like, a source told The Sun that the palace did not approve or have any knowledge of it before it was issued. So this thing just landed like a bomb for everyone in the palace. I mean, it's patently clear from lines such as, "I can only reiterate my regret that I was mistaken to think that what I thought I knew of him was evidently not the real person, given what we know now."
How many words does it take to say nothing?
I mean, the whole thing hasn't been received very well. Even very deferent royal biographers and royal experts have been talking to the Mail. Angela Levin wrote a piece in which she called the statement staggeringly arrogant, disingenuous and dishonest, and an insult to our intelligence. And then Ingrid Seward, the editor of Magistrate magazine, noted that if Andrew was a politician, he would have to resign immediately.
And that's coming from someone who's an editor of Majesty magazine.
I know. But, okay, let's break it down, Tom.
Okay, so will we start with... It's apparent to me since the suicide of Mr. Epstein that there has been an immense amount of media speculation about so much in his life. This is particularly the case in relation to my former association or friendship with Mr. Epstein.
I can't believe this, association or friendship. Like, do you invite an associate to a party hosted by the Queen at Windsor Castle? Do you go on holidays with an associate? Do you feel comfortable enough in the home of an associate to answer their goddamn door?
I also want to know what associate you have that introduces you to sweatpants.
This is from a really good profile in Vanity Fair from 2011. It's called The Trouble with Andrew by Edward Klein, and the whole thing is definitely worth reading for like background on Andrew's just general dodginess. But there's a source, someone who knows both Andrew and Epstein, says, "I remember when Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein first became friends. Jeffrey had Andrew put on a pair of sweatpants for the first time in his life. He had him wear blue jeans for the first time. It was Jeffrey who taught Andrew how to relax." Oh, and they do say that the major reason that Andrew was hanging out with Jeffrey was to get money for Sarah Ferguson, who's like perpetually in debt, and that they suspect that it was actually a lot more than £15,000 that Epstein loaned to her. But I was very interested in this line that after Jeffrey had been convicted in 2008, this mutual friend rings up Andrew and says, "You cannot have a relationship with Jeffrey. You can't do these things." And he says, "Stop giving me a hard time. You're such a Puritan." And like then starts lecturing him, like, "Leave me alone. Jeffrey's my friend. Being loyal to your friends is a virtue, and I'm going to be loyal to him." This is total blind loyalty, though. The source goes on to talk about how Andrew's really stubborn, that if he likes someone, he'll ignore the truth about them. That goes for both Jeffrey and Fergie, that he basically thinks he can power his way through anything because the Queen spoils him so much.
Yeah, I mean, talking about blind loyalty.
But then there was also a piece in the Daily Mail that was talking about how in 2000 people were already starting to be a little bit skeptical about Epstein, and that Fergie and some other people in the palace were warning Andrew that his friendship with Epstein was raising concerns. But he carried on regardless, and he like goes off on holiday with Epstein and his alleged procurer Ghislaine Maxwell to Thailand, and then we get all those photographs of him sunbathing on a yacht with loads of topless women around him.
Well, you know, loyalty's a virtue.
Okay, let's go back to the statement though, because Andrew goes on to write, "I met Mr. Epstein in 1999. During the time I knew him, I saw him infrequently and probably no more than only once or twice a year. I have stayed in a number of his residences."
One part of this is true, and that's that he stayed in a number of his residences.
But it's very convenient that he admits how often Epstein stayed in royal residences, that Andrew had hosted him at Balmoral, in Windsor, at Sandringham, often when the Queen was there.
Yeah. We know for certain that there are years when they met more than once or twice. We know that in 2000, they attended Dance of the Decades for Andrew's 40th birthday at Windsor Castle, as well as a hookers and bondage-themed Halloween party at Epstein's home in New York, plus a birthday party for Ghislaine, and they spent New Year's together. So that's already 4 times in the space of a year?
Yeah, that we know about. And then in 2001, Virginia Roberts, who claims that Epstein used her as a sex slave, has alleged that she had 3 sexual encounters with Andrew in London, New York and the Caribbean that year. And this week, the Daily Mail basically did loads of research into the flight logs from Epstein's private jet, which has been called the Lolita Express. And they allegedly place Andrew and Virginia in the same area on those 3 occasions. So again, that's more than 2. And also a lot more than 2 is the 6 days that Andrew spent at Epstein's home in New York in 2010, 2 years after he was convicted.
Because it makes you think as well, does he consider a 6-day stay seeing someone once? In which case, saying once or twice a year means absolutely nothing. And even if it was true, once or twice a year over the course of a 20-year friendship?
That's a lot.
Probably the most controversial part of this statement is when he says, "At no stage in the limited time I spent with him did I see, witness or suspect any behaviour of the sort that subsequently led to his arrest and conviction." This is almost definitely a lie.
I think it's bullshit. I mean, do you really need to see this behaviour? As we've said a couple of times now, Andrew kept hanging around with Epstein 2 years after he was convicted of procuring a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. Just because Epstein wasn't, actually abusing any girls in front of Andrew doesn't mean he didn't see anything.
So even if you set aside all the images of nude girls that were seized from his Manhattan home, there are so many red flags in this guy's general decor in these multiple residences that Andrew admits to having visited and stayed in.
We only know about a couple of them, but the ones in the Manhattan home and the Palm Beach home are, extremely creepy.
He had, a life-size female doll hanging from a chandelier, and in the master bathroom there was a set of prosthetic breasts on the wall for him to play with or look at when he was in the tub.
And, even if Andrew can say, well, I never went into the master bathroom, he was definitely walking around the house, and even on the ground floor there were numerous self-portraits of Epstein with very young and often nude girls. They were hung all over the house. And it wasn't just this New York house either. His erotic art and decor was also pretty visible in the Palm Beach house. There were photos from 2005 that showed a bust of a woman's bottom fixed to the wall, paintings of women with their legs spread, paintings of faceless, naked women.
He had a painting of Bill Clinton in a blue dress.
In the Monica Lewinsky dress, yeah, in the Manhattan house, which has also been called, the House of Horrors.
Yeah.
So Andrew concludes his statement by saying, "I am at a loss to be able to understand or explain Mr. Epstein's lifestyle. I deplore the exploitation of any human being and would not condone, participate in, or encourage any such behaviour." I mean, total bullshit. Outrageous. As the Guardian columnist Marina Hyde put it, sex trafficking and abuse of minors is not a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Marina Hyde also wrote a good piece in The Guardian this week about Andrew's earlier statement a few days ago, where the palace said the Duke of York has been appalled by the recent reports of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes.
But he wasn't appalled by the crimes that he was actually convicted of.
Yeah, in the Guardian piece, Marina describes how Andrew famously demanded that his daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, were able to keep their titles, to have security details, to have money from the civil list, to full royal weddings and that he like had a real strop when they were denied some of those. She calls him the kind of man who has a two-tier view of the female sex. There's a world for their daughters, hopefully insulated from men like their friend Jeffrey, and then there's another world for the girls who service their friend Jeffrey. Yet decent, humane people know there aren't two kinds of women and girls. There are just women and girls. They're all daughters to your Royal Highness. She was referring to this wild story that broke earlier this week about Andrew receiving a foot massage from what we're told is a young and well-dressed Russian woman at Epstein's home. So this would have been around the same time as that video footage of him peering around the door and the photo of them in Central Park. So we know about this because a tech author called Evgeny Morozov wrote a piece this week about his former literary agent, John Brockman, who was encouraging him to meet Epstein. And Brockman described visiting Epstein's home and seeing Andrew getting this foot massage. And as he was having his feet massaged, he's complaining about other European royals
having it so much better than him, that Prince Albert of Monaco works a 12-hour day, but at 9 p.m. when he goes out, he does whatever he wants and nobody cares. But if I do it, I'm in big trouble.
Poor Andrew.
Marina also commented on this. She compared it to Chandler's line from Friends.
My wallet's too small for my 50s, and my diamond shoes are too tight.
The other thing we learned this week about Andrew is that he is, according to a source in The Express, willing to provide a witness statement or undergo questioning to help the authorities in either Britain or the United States. I mean, how incredibly generous of him.
So kind.
Like, isn't it up to the police to decide whether what Andrew saw was relevant or suspicious or in any way important to their case? Not
him.
Andrew.
I love the idea that he thinks that this statement answers all the questions that they could possibly have for him.
Thankfully, the lawyers for Epstein's victims are pushing for him to provide a sworn testimony. Brad Edwards, who's the lawyer for Virginia Roberts, told The Guardian, "I look forward to coordinating a formal deposition where he will be given the opportunity to tell us everything he knows." Wow.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I mean, he wants it to happen as soon as possible. So do I.
And I suppose Andrew's just said that he's perfectly willing to do it.
I know. But for the time being, Andrew is very busy. You know, last week we heard that he was starting to shit himself, but he seems to have resolved all of that and taken to the golf course in Spain.
He's off at a private gated complex, and an onlooker told The Sun he seemed very relaxed. He loves golf and he's very good at it. You wouldn't know to look at him, all of the trouble that's going on around him. They've been having fun, enjoying the perfect weather and great food around here.
They were definitely instructed to emphasise how good he is at golf.
Very good.
He's very good at it.
I may not know much about golf, Tucker, but I know how to hold the bat.
These quotes are just crazy. And also, given that we know that Epstein is the one that taught Andrew how to relax. And good thing he picked up that skill, because now he's relaxed, he's having fun, he's totally chilled.
Do you think he brought a pair of sweatpants with him?
And possibly a pair of blue jeans too. We were talking a couple of weeks ago about how they were really trying to get this will they, won't they, Fergie and Andrew remarriage story going, but that seems to be a bit of a bust. So instead, they seem to be turning to Beatrice.
So it looks like Beatrice is possibly now engaged to her boyfriend, who's property developer Edoardo Mapelli-Mozzi, or Edo to his friends. This has been kind of leaked by a member of the family.
Yeah, we had a very declarative statement from that Majesty magazine editor Ingrid Seward again, saying they're going to get married. I was told by a member of the family. We also had the Telegraph republished this interview with Edo that they ran in April, and it's so fawning. We've got him running his hand through his thick dark hair. We're told about his striking eyes, how he's a perfect match for Beatrice.
God, he sounds great, doesn't he?
And Beatrice, I feel terrible for her, because she apparently told the Queen about their plans when they were in Balmoral the same weekend as Epstein's death.
How do they find time for that conversation that weekend?
This just smacks of Beatrice being used as a human shield for her father, to me.
Yeah.
And it would be terrible if they do announce their engagement anytime in the next, like, couple of months, because it's going to be totally overshadowed and tied to her father's, like, seedy drama forever.
I mean, it better be a long engagement, right? Because if they're getting married, like, next year or something, I doubt that this will have kind of gone away quietly by then.
But speaking of conversations in Balmoral, I am fascinated about how this Prince and the Pedo story is being discussed in the family.
So Vanity Fair piece reported that in 2011, when the palace were called upon to give a statement surrounding the allegations against Andrew that he had sex with Virginia Roberts, that the Queen summoned Andrew to explain himself, that she was not amused. She wanted to know why he consorted with Jeffrey Epstein, who, you know, at that point the FBI had linked him with something like 40 young women. And she was very to the point. She demanded to know if Andrew had any more surprises up his sleeve.
According to a source, Andrew assured his mother that he had no sexual relationship with Virginia Roberts or any of Jeffrey Epstein's girls. And this seems to have satisfied her, because she took a pretty extraordinary measure of intervening by investing him with the insignia of a Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order. We talked about this a few episodes ago, but it's basically like the highest possible honour for service, personal service to the Queen. So it was a very symbolic gesture, and kind of showed everybody how she was standing by him and how she supported him. But, you know, there's only so many investitures that you can do. Like, she has nothing else to give him. How is she going to step in this time?
I'm really interested because it says, you know, it seems like this investiture made him untouchable is the word that's kind of been used. But I don't think that same feeling applies today. There is no untouchable. So the only power the Queen really has now is keeping things from coming to light.
And especially going forward, Prince Charles and Andrew don't have a great relationship. It's well known. And when Charles becomes king, he has made it clear that he wants to streamline the family. So what is going to happen to Andrew when Charles becomes king and, you know, Mummy's no longer around to protect him?
A lot of the media has been referring to this as the August Horribilis, which is a reference to the Queen's Annus Horribilis.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
1992 was the big year where you had Andrew and Fergie split up.
The toe-sucking.
The toe-sucking happened. Diana published her book. Then Charles and Diana separated. Anne divorced from Mark Phillips. And there was a big fire at Windsor Castle. So it was a bad year for the Queen. And this month has been compared to that. What do you think? Do you think it's a fair comparison?
In some ways, yes. I mean, I think the Andrew scandal is definitely comparable. Like, that's got to be the worst ever, I would think.
Yeah.
A lot worse than toe-sucking or the Camillagate tapes. Harry and Meghan flying private is another thing that reporters keep tacking onto this as well, that the goodwill for Harry and Meghan has all but evaporated and that they're threatening the monarchy. And then as well, you have Zara Tindall and Fergie taking big sums of money to introduce the Hong Kong businessman Dr. Johnny Han to their influential contacts. And sort of further in the background, although not for Tom and I, is Will's alleged affair with Rose Hanbury, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
But what you see, which we haven't seen for years, I would say, is this narrative of the monarchy in crisis in actual, like, major tabloids.
Yeah, they're really pushing this new angle that how will the royal family survive all of this, and can they ever recover? In the Express today, the royal commentator Christopher Wilson asked, can the royal family recover from this perfect storm? Then you had the royal biographer Penny Jr., the Daily Mail this weekend, saying that the controversies swirling around Andrew, Zara, Fergie, Harry and Meghan do nothing but give fuel to those who would like to see the abolition of this revered institution. You know, a lot of this paints the Queen as a very helpless, vulnerable figure who is being burdened by all these irresponsible family members of hers, and, you know, she's just a fragile old lady and shouldn't have to deal with this. But it's still her job. She's still the most powerful person in the monarchy.
Yeah.
If she can't handle it, then it's time to hand the reins over to Charles.
It's not like she hasn't played a role in some of this.
Those images are burned on my brain.
Only 2 weeks ago, she voluntarily placed herself in a photo op with Andrew that is going to forever link her image with a story about a paedophile.
Yeah, and she has a shit-eating grin on her face. The thing that really stuck out to me, though, you know, talking about the media portrayal of this whole thing, was there was a front page from the Daily Mail this week that really summarised all that we've been talking about in terms of the false equivalence between the Andrew drama and the Harry and Meghan private jet controversy, as they had side by side on the top half of their front page. On one hand, you have Harry being defended by Elton John for going on holiday in a private jet, and the other you have the flight logs putting Andrew in the same place as Virginia Roberts on 3 occasions. And the headline is "The Prince's Turbulent Times." These don't weigh the same. They don't carry the same weight.
Only one of these is potentially criminal.
But we're getting this whole thing now where people are starting to point it out, and they're asking why is everybody going so hard on Harry and Meghan when this is obviously a much more severe story with Andrew. You know, as though Harry and Meghan's use of private jets is as serious as maintaining a 20-year friendship with a paedophile, as hosting that paedophile in royal residences, as being pictured with a teenager who claims she was forced to have sex with him. I thought this Vanity Fair piece by Erin Vanderhoof put it well when she said that Andrew's issues are easy to condemn but difficult to understand, and that makes for unpleasant reading, but Meghan is photogenic and polarising, perfect for filling column inches. So what have Harry and Meghan actually done?
I mean, the main thing is the 4 private jet flights in 2 weeks, which does come very soon after their public talking about the environment.
Their focus on environmental activism has been ongoing. The 2 incidences that everybody keeps referring to as hypocrisy is when Harry wrote on Instagram that every choice, every footprint, every action makes a difference. And then his interview with Jane Goodall in British Vogue, which I think has been kind of taken out of context.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because the way it played out was, in the interview, Harry says, "I've always wanted to try and ensure that even before having a child and hoping to have children." And Jane Goodall interrupts and says, "Not too many."
Laughing.
And he says, 2 maximum. And then he continues on with the question he was going to ask. We've talked about this before, but like the context is not him giving a lecture on why people should only have 2 children.
But that seems to be how it's been interpreted by a lot of people. But anyway, I was so surprised this week to see Elton John jumping in, flying in to defend Harry and Meghan, that we knew they had been in Nice, but they had actually been visiting Elton and David Furnish's home, and that he revealed in a long statement on his social media that he had paid for this private jet and that he offset the carbon by making a donation to Carbon Footprint. I thought the wording of his statement was really strong. He said, "I'm deeply distressed by today's distorted and malicious account in the press surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's private stay at my home in Nice last week. Prince Harry's mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, was one of my dearest friends. I feel a profound sense of obligation to protect Harry and his family from the unnecessary press intrusion that contributed to Diana's death." And then he went on to say that he wanted to help them maintain a high level of much needed protection, and he called on the press to cease these relentless and untrue assassinations on their character that are spuriously crafted on an almost daily basis. He didn't hold back, did he?
No, and I mean, the way he did it kind of meant that the press had to report the full statement as well and reference their own actions, which I thought was, like, smart.
But it kind of triggered this flood of support then, because then you had Ellen DeGeneres coming in and revealing that she and her wife Portia de Rossi had visited Harry and Meghan in Windsor, and she wrote on Twitter, "They were the most down-to-earth, compassionate people. Imagine being attacked for everything you do when all you're trying to do is make the world better." Like, who even knew that Harry and Meghan were friends with Ellen and Portia?
But Jamila Jamil was good as well. She said, "Ugh, dear England and English press, just say you hate her because she's black and him for marrying a black woman and be done with it. God damn it. Your bullying is so embarrassing and obvious. You've all lost your marbles. It's 2019. Grow up."
At first, I really liked this, and I was so glad that somebody was pointing out the racial element that everybody keeps denying is a part of the attacks on Meghan. But then she had to go and follow it up with this tweet basically saying it's not safe for civilians to fly with members of the royal family because we could be at risk of assassination or kidnapping. And people just went wild with that, saying that it was an extraordinary rant, blah, blah, blah. Jessica Mulroney also joined in, Meghan's BFF and occasional stylist. She wrote on Instagram, "Shame on you, you racist bullies. 3 years of undeserved hate and abuse. It's enough." That was a good one.
Yeah. Pink also tweeted, she basically said, "Teach your children it's cool to be kind."
I mean, who would have thought Pink was following the coverage of Meghan Markle?
I love it.
I love Meghan's celebrity fan club. However, royal reporters do not, and they just use this as another stick to beat Harry and Meghan with. A royal reporter with The Express said that Elton John's comments were greeted with glee in newsrooms, revealing a pretty ugly giddiness around having more material to attack Harry and Meghan about. It does tap into this criticism of Harry and Meghan that they're more interested in being celebrities than in being royals, and that they hang out with too many famous people.
If you had Meghan's friends from college or from school tweeting about it, it wouldn't have the same impact. Like, you need to have these big names.
And so much of the coverage of these comments by celebrities was described as them defending the private jet use, which is...
It's a bit of a simplification because actually
It's such a simplification.
They're defending the character of these people more so than the use of private jets, I thought.
And it's obviously about a much longer, more insidious 3-year-long campaign, as Jessica Mulroney describes it, that has been bullying and has an obvious racial undertone and oftentimes overtone. I think two things that people get really sensitive about are comparing Meghan and Harry to Diana, and also mentioning anything to do with Meghan's race and saying that criticism of her is racist. And we've seen so much debate about that in the past week or a few weeks. But it's very obvious to me that so much of the, say in this particular instance, people are very uncomfortable with the idea of a non-white woman flying in a private plane and having access to these luxuries and having this sort of fairy tale story.
We didn't talk about the greatest defender of all.
Oh my God. Argentine polo player and like general hero Nacho Figueras is Harry's number one. I mean, you know, Jessica Mulroney is very defensive of Meghan always, but she's got nothing on Nacho.
He's so good. So he commented on Elton's Instagram post to throw his own hat into the ring. I think I'm just going to read the full thing because it's so good. He says, "I also have the privilege of spending time with these two great human beings. I say privilege not only because of their status, but because of the kind of people they are. They are the most humble and kind people that I know, and who they are should allow them to be even more inspiring to all of us. Instead, the press focuses on attacking them and trying to find problems where there are not. I will defend them and what they do and who they are for as long as I live. They are a treasure in today's society, and we should be taking care of them and feeling inspired by them. I know I do." H&M, we have your back. Please be patient and do not change a thing.
We've spoken about Nacho defending Harry before. He defended him after Harry went to work a couple of days after baby Archie was born. And again, he just brings his all.
What I love about it is because they're friends through polo, they're always photographed together wearing special costumes and with horses. So you just get the impression that it's like an almost medieval style, like, squire who, like, puts the armour on his king before he goes into battle and would, you know... Oh my god, it's so good. I suppose he's not, you know, as much of a celebrity as the others, but he really made up for that in his
devotion.
Feeling. Yeah.
You know who absolutely did not come to Harry and Meghan's defence this week?
Be Will and Kate.
I mean, this is shocking trolling by the Cambridges, and there has been so much conversation around whether this was purposeful or not, but oh my god. Okay, so what happened was Will and Kate were flying to visit the Queen at Balmoral, and they decided to fly commercial on the budget airline Flybe from Norwich to Aberdeen, and they were very conveniently papped on the tarmac, with Will carrying his own bags and getting George and Charlotte to help carrying the bags too, and Kate with Louis in her arms, just strolling onto the plane with all the other passengers.
It was so lucky that there was someone there to take the picture.
I've got a conspiracy theory about this, Tom, because they had yet again, a very convenient unnamed source, another passenger on the plane who spoke to the Mail and said, I fly this route all the time and we were none the wiser. No one knew they were on the flight. Later on, I realised that Kate's mother was sat a few rows in front of me. Kate's mother, Carol Middleton, who didn't appear
In the photos.
at all.
Could she have been behind the lens?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past her.
Where do you think Kate got her photography skills from?
So this flight, we were screamingly told, cost £73. And the whole way this was covered was so breathless and so loud. And these pictures were blown up.
Honestly, my mind was boggled when this happened. And even since, with all the information that we're going to kind of go through now that's come through about it, it has been taking up an inordinate amount of space in my mind. Because for this to happen between brothers is totally nuts, I think. So we originally think that they're on this budget airline, and then it comes out that in order for them to fly on this Flybe plane, they had to fly an additional plane to Norwich Airport from 123 miles away, because the one they were going to go on said Eastern Airways on it, which is a franchise of Flybe, but Flybe wanted their own branding on it.
Yeah, so it ended up having 2 empty planes, because then the original plane had to fly out empty because the Flybe plane was carrying the royals. Like, this is just so funny. Like, it totally blew up in Will's face because, I mean, let's not mince words. Like, we do believe that Kensington Palace tipped off the Mail, and that we got these photos and these very handy unnamed passenger comments literally days after all this controversy around Harry and Meghan's private plane thing is. It is so petty, it's so obvious.
Was getting caught part of your plan?
Of course.
You know, in the end, Will just played himself, because even before we got the story about the Flybe empty plane nonsense, the fact that there were all these pictures of Will and Kate and all their kids just further illustrated Harry and Meghan's need for privacy, because there's no way that Harry and Meghan and Archie could have flown commercial just like this without, again, having all these pap shots of them.
Yeah, and then there's a comparison that when Kate and Will had newborn baby George, they took a private jet to Balmoral because it would have been too difficult for them to fly any other way. Harry and Meghan, with a 3-month-old baby, are having exactly the same problem.
And royal reporters were really keen to point out that this was not staged, that anybody who thinks it was a setup is very mistaken, because travel arrangements are booked months in advance. But this all suggests that this was a totally last-minute plan, forcing Flybe to have to scramble to provide their branded plane. All the same reporters are just trying to emphasise that Flybe is a PR-hungry airline and Will and Kate are the unwitting victims of this PR
How
mess.
could they have known about the extra 4.5 tonnes of carbon emissions that their jaunt to Balmoral caused?
I feel like this would have hurt Harry, though. It's such a striking act of disloyalty.
Why wouldn't Will just have a word with Harry? Why wouldn't he call him up and say, this is really bad for the firm?
Because he's a messy bitch who lives for drama.
He is, yeah.
Harry and Meghan did make some attempts to shift focus away from the plane nonsense. There was an announcement earlier this week that they had assembled an all-female team around them. I love this. This is a really tangible example of how they are shaking up the royal family. And historically, almost all the royals have surrounded themselves with men in the top positions. The Queen's private secretary is always a man.
So their newest hire is pro-EU former ambassador Fiona McElwam, who's joined their deputy private secretary Heather Wong and head of communications Sarah Latham. They also have 2 senior female press officers and a team of female private office employees.
And on top of that, they poached Natalie Campbell, the director of the Royal Foundation, to join them in the Sussex Royal Foundation because she had apparently bonded with Meghan over the Together cookbook. I think it's cool of Harry to be surrounding himself with women in top-level positions.
Yeah.
So much of the criticism around Harry and Meghan is how they do this do as I say, not as I do approach, but this is a very literal example of them doing as they say in espousing their feminist principles.
It's clearly working because they've, had a few projects announced that are so innovative and smart, and they're moving in such an interesting direction.
Smart, you say? Speaking of smart work, Meghan made a surprise appearance. This is the day after all the big private plane stories hit the front pages. We got a little clip on their Instagram stories on Sussex Royal of Meghan showing up at a photo shoot with SmartWorks, which is one of her patronages, and also the one that she announced in Vogue that she would be launching a workwear collection with this autumn. And they have kind of a weird style of doing their Instagram videos where they do these really quick clips, jumping between clips. So it's you're watching, it's the Instagram story video limit was 3 seconds instead of 15. So it's still quite jarring to get used to watching it, but they seem to be really into it. And this time they also used a little music sample of Bill Withers' song Lovely Day. So Meghan. This was an adorable video though. She looked so happy. She was beaming. She was hugging all the women who were coming in to work on the campaign.
She was clapping.
We got to see her art directing and giving her feedback on some of the photos. I particularly loved, we got a really quick glimpse of one of the photos, and it was so Meghan. It was a black and white image of a woman posing with her hand in her hair, her gaze cast downwards.
In a very clean white shirt. This is the Rachel Zane Suits capsule collection.
Not for lads, Billy. Lads do football or boxing or wrestling. Not friggin' ballet.
This week, the American TV host Lara Spencer, she is a presenter on Good Morning America, was talking about what George is going to be doing when he goes back to school this year and how one of his classes will be ballet.
Prince William says George absolutely loves ballet. I have news for you, Prince William. We'll see how long that lasts.
There's a big backlash, which is great. So she was accused of bullying, and she apologised, saying, "My sincere apologies for an insensitive comment I made in pop news yesterday. From ballet to anything one wants to explore in life, I say go for it. I fully believe we should all be free to pursue our passions. Go climb your mountain and love every minute of it."
It's a bit of a cop-out apology, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had loads of Broadway people, dancers, celebrities like Rosie O'Donnell coming to Prince George's defence.
I have to say, though, nobody's been criticising George when his celebrity friend spoke up in his defence. That's right. Derek Huff posted a very long caption on Instagram that ended, "Follow your bliss and you'll always have the last laugh. Nothing but love and encouragement." Which is lovely.
Do you think he's going to be joining Roger Federer and Bear Grylls as George's latest celebrity mentor?
George's kind of high council is looking very strong at the moment.
We did get a good story about the Queen and the US state visit earlier this week, and that's got to be my quote of the week, because the symbolism of this is pretty incredible. So there's a story in the Sunday Times that when Trump visited Buckingham Palace, he insisted on flying by helicopter twice in one day, apparently damaging the Queen's grass. The day after he arrived at the palace, the Queen was talking to Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister, who was also in the UK, and she is said to have revealed her distress over the state of her garden. A source close to Morrison told the Times he had got off the plane and went straight to see the Queen, who led him out to the gardens and said, "Come and look at my lawn, it's ruined." Apparently the helicopter's engines caused scorch marks on the lawn and the wheels left divots in the grass. This is like where she has her garden parties, where she walks her dogs, is what she looks out on from her state apartments, and she was pissed as hell.
English people are obsessed with their lawns. They have them, so I can imagine her being absolutely livid.
I love this Australian PM's source just running off to the Times to tell them, like, you know, typical Trump, like, scorches the earth anywhere he goes. What about you, Tom? What's your quote of the week?
I had a slightly different one. I was very interested in Harry writing to wheelchair tennis Paralympian Dylan Alcott to congratulate him on his recent win at Wimbledon's quad wheelchair singles final. Harry added a little postscript to his congratulations that says, "I'm wondering if you wore your Invictus Games budgie smugglers on the big night to accept it. Mine have come in handy in this recent UK heatwave."
So good. On that Harry and Meghan headed notepaper as well. I would cherish that.
Can you imagine? Oh, you'd have to get it framed.
I mean, it is so hot, so I can see where Harry's coming from.
Can you? Okay, what about a fit for a queen this week?
Oh, it's got to be Meghan.
Yeah.
I love this surprise appearance anyway, but I like that after all the controversy around the environmental damage and, you know, how useful is a carbon offset really and all that stuff, she wears a sustainable shirt by the London brand With Nothing Underneath. Affordable too, only £85, and also wears a sustainable jewellery designer, Pippa Small. She wears like a load of her rings that are ethically sourced. Another of Meghan's favourites, so again reminding us that she wears them often and that she is committed to sustainability. I did as well like that at first royal watchers misidentified the shirt she was wearing as being by a Californian brand called Frank and Eileen, and this shirt cost £185 compared to the other one, but it's still sold out.
Oh my god, the good day for them.
I know, it's great. I mean, it's still a nice shirt and very close to the other one, but I like that they were able to benefit off of this, another sustainable brand. But first in line, who's it going to be?
It's a bit of a tricky one, this, because I do kind of want to give my first in line to Will for like his cunning, but then it also blowing up, which I found very entertaining.
This is like peak royal trolling, I would say. And, you know, he tried it, but it blew up in his face, as you say. So, ultimately unsuccessful. I did as well like that this time he made George carry the heavy bags.
George is a big boy now. You can't have the light bags forever.
He's had plenty of practice on those light Waitrose bags. It's time to gear up to something a little more hardcore.
And he knows that, you know, if he's only taking the lighter bags, Charlotte's going to be on that burner phone immediately, calling her
Hello,
sources.
people. Next week, we will be back unless the monarchy collapses, as is predicted by the tabloids. We'll be back talking about any further developments in this Andrew Epstein story. If there's any more fuel in this private jet story, we'll be following that too. And we'll also have a look at what's going on in Balmoral as the summer holidays continue.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at AirheadsPod or on Facebook at Airheads.
Please, if you like this episode, leave us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great week.
Bye.
If the cabin air supply fails, oxygen will be provided. Masks like this will appear automatically. Stay in your seats and pull the mask towards you. Place the mask over your mouth and nose like this and breathe normally.